EMFs throw water in deep chaos. If you take a glass of water and put it next to Wi-Fi router, it will just go crazy. Even if you take the toxin out, whatever the toxin is, the frequency of that toxin is still inside the water, even if you take it out. Our whole quest was to create the most positive, dominant water there is.
Mario, thank you so much for taking the time to jump on here and visit with me. The conversation we're going to have around water and mitochondria and light and all these things that seem just kind of wild, they're so important. And I'm finding that more and more as I look into cancer and agriculture and all the things that tie into health. And so if you don't care to give us kind of that intro, and the first thing I really want you to answer when we go into Analemma is why in the world it tastes so different. But if you don't care, brother, introduce yourself.
So first of all, Logan, thank you so much for having me. It's my greatest pleasure in life to be able to share, because most people aren't aware what water is. There are worlds hidden in water. People just consider water as a simple element. Nothing could be further from the truth. Like, if you just look at it, our body, 70% of our body mass is water. And even that, like when you look at it, 70% of us is water. But from the molecular point of view, 99% of all of our molecules are water, very light water molecules. We only have 1% other heavy molecules. If you can imagine, we're actually more water than the ocean. So that off the bat tells you there is something extraordinarily important about water that we are not really kind of talking about too much in our society.
Yeah.
So we realized in our research that water currently exists in what we call a chaotic state. So it's still H2O, but H2O molecules, they actually move randomly. They're crashing into each other constantly. But since all of this is happening on an atomic level, nobody's really aware of that. Water can exist in a harmonic state, not just chaotic state. And we, in our research, we found a way to bring water in harmony. When you use our technology, what happens is that those same H2O, chaotic H2O molecules, they colloquially speaking join hands and they start forming a liquid crystalline structure. Water enters into a liquid crystalline state, and through this process, water becomes alive. It becomes empowered, and I truly believe that this is the way nature intended water to be. But because of all of this EMFs, toxins, everything that we did to the world in the last 100 years, that actually came out of sync. This is just a short intro.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. So let's go into the natural aspect of that then, because as you're talking, we think of spring water or creeks or rivers, and we're working in circular patterns, right? And it's not in these straight lines or jagged. It's being worked by nature through the hydrology cycle. So why is that important?
Well, back in the day, I mean, even now, but due to everything that's going on, water cannot bring itself. We tested water everywhere on the planet, and the only place where we found coherent water in its natural state is in places which are really remote, really outside of civilization, like really, really, really remote. And even then, when you take the water out of the well, water molecules break and water goes back to chaos. So we couldn't even bring it to the lab. Water was already broken.
Wow.
But anyhow, back in the day, when you have a beautiful mountain stream, so the water creates this left and right vortexes, and it keeps the water in coherent state. And if you would drink the water back in the day directly from the mountain stream, you would have all the benefit. But we can hypothesize why the water now everywhere exists in chaotic state, but we believe that it's because of widespread EMFs and various environmental toxins. Because we realized in our research, again, we can go into all of the details, that EMFs throw water in deep chaos. If you take a glass of water and put it next to Wi-Fi router, it will just go crazy in terms of
Fantastic.
chaos.
I love it because I got a Wi-Fi router sitting here beside me. That makes me feel good after you just told me how much water
Now,
we are.
but you're drinking Analemma water. We actually did a study. Maybe we can jump into since now it kind of conversation open. But we realized we were one of, I would say that we were the first company that realized in our research that EMFs change dramatically and in a very detrimental way the state of our brainwaves. And what we did actually, we put QEEG equipment on people. We monitored their brainwave patterns, and all of them, they were using a cell phone for 3 minutes, and you could see the baseline, and you could see when they're using the cell phone how detrimental effect on the brainwaves EMFs have. But where the magic happened, we actually gave a couple of glasses of regular water and a couple of glasses of Analemma water to them, and the guys that took regular water, nothing happened. But almost as soon as a person took a couple of sips of Analemma water, since this water is an electromagnetic phenomenon, which we're going to touch in a second, there was almost instant better connection between the left and the right hemisphere of the brain, and almost instant harmonizing effect on the brain waves, which with the people who drank regular water, this negative effect actually persisted for much, much, much longer. But almost instantly, as soon as you drink Analemma water, your brainwave patterns go back to harmony.
Mm, wow. Okay, a couple different directions I really want to go. So Mario, with that, the first thing that came to mind was I am very curious on the effect that the Analemma water has on the glycocalyx. Like I'm very curious as to how that plays out in, especially in the conversation of, say, nanobubbles. That is fascinating to me. But before we get into that, in looking at cancer and trying to understand like what is cancer, and obviously we have zero consensus on what cancer is, what causes it, all of that good stuff. But what we do know is that it very highly correlates to mitochondrial dysfunction, right? And so, Seafried's done a good job. We've got a ton of metabolic aspects of looking at cancer. But with that, one thing that I did not fully realize with mitochondria, oh, I didn't know it at all, is that the mitochondria actually produces water, metabolic water, deuterium depleted water, a lot of different terms for it. But with that, as Doug Wallace at CHOP has laid out, is like the idea of heteroplasmy. Like as we get older, the mitochondria is worse at producing water. So my question is, what are your thoughts on the whole mitochondria produces water? Why is that water different? And the heteroplasmy with using, the mother water or structured water?
Well, this is you're coming to the heart of it. I believe that, and in our research, we realize that water is the most fundamental level of our existence. And if everything exists within the water, water has memory, so to speak. So we actually went about it in a bit different way. We wanted to prove that the mitochondrial health increases exponentially when you drink this water, but we went through the route of ATP. We actually did a double-blind placebo-controlled study where we wanted to see what happens with ATP levels when people drink this water. So we employed luciferase, which is an enzyme that catalyzes light production in bioluminescent organisms, and due to its extraordinary sensitivity, you can very accurately measure ATP levels in humans. So we did a snapshot of ATP levels. ATP, adenosine triphosphate, is the primary energy currency of the cell, is directly responsible for the powering of the majority of cellular processes inside of our body. But most of all, this is, like you mentioned, mitochondrial activity. So we took a snapshot of ATP levels in the beginning of the study. Then people drank 1.5 liters of Analemma water per day for 2 months without changing anything else in the world. They didn't change their exercise regime. They didn't change their diets. They didn't use any supplements. So it was a clean slate. So we could see whether something actually happens when people drink this water. And after 2 months, we took another test to see what happened to ATP levels. And what we saw, that there was a 20% rise in overall mitochondrial energy of the body over the placebo. When you calculate the placebo in, that's almost 1/3. And just like, scientists now agree that one of the key causes of cellular aging, including all of the diseases that come with it, is decline in mitochondrial function. And we proved that just by drinking this water, you improve mitochondrial function more than significantly. So this is the connection to mitochondrial health. And as you're aware, if you have a optimum functioning mitochondria, then basically any system in your body is going to work in a much, much, much better way.
Mario, would it be safe to say, or safe to hypothesize, that by drinking the Analemma water, that we are putting essentially the mother water in our body, and it is affecting all the other water cells? Therefore,
Yes.
we're basically making the mitochondria more efficient at producing the metabolic water that it produces, anyways.
Exactly. So usually, just like when you drink the water, mitochondria needs to constantly replenish, and we're not getting that through regular water. So by doing this, body doesn't need to work as hard.
Mm.
It can metabolize water in a much more efficient way. But there is the other element which is truly, truly important. As I mentioned, analemma water is an electromagnetic phenomenon. Like, we realize that water is a broadband absorber, receiver, and transmitter of energy, frequency, and vibration. And it's always going to pick up the most dominant frequency of its environment. As soon as we realized that, our whole quest was to create the most positive, dominant water there is, because we knew that if we would expose any other water to it, all the water, since water always picks up the most dominant frequency of its environment, all the water would become it. So when
Mm.
you expose any water to the mother water, all the water becomes the mother water. That's where the beauty of it. That's why it's so elegant. That's why, we decided to do a wand where we took a crystal vial and we filled it with mother water, and there's a stainless steel holder. And this crystal actually has twofold purpose. One, of course, to create the barrier between the mother water inside and rest of the water through which you're swirling. But more importantly, crystal serves as a superconductor. It allows the frequency of the mother water to pass through without any loss. So in an effect, when you take the analemma, when you take the wand and submerge it into the water and you start swirling, any H2O molecule, chaotic H2O molecule that comes in the close proximity to the mother water, starts to mimic its exact structure. So in an effect, after 30 seconds of swirling, you get a glass of mother water. And when you drink it, I mentioned this EMF study, but the first study that we actually proved that something biologically remarkable happens when people drink this water was also brainwave study. Because since this water is an electromagnetic phenomenon, we were thinking, what's the most electromagnetic part of human biology that we can very accurately measure? It is our brainwaves. So we did a double blind study where we put two genetically identical twins. It's a golden standard study because these are two genetically identical twins. Whatever happens to one must happen to the other one with the same stimuli. So we put QEEG equipment on them, and we gave we gave two glasses of water. One was analemma water, one was regular water. And the doctor administering the water didn't know which one was which, and twins didn't know which one was which. They just took a couple of sips of water, and we monitored their brain waves. And as soon as when the twin that took regular water, we saw, like you would expect, zero change in the brainwave patterns. Everything stayed the same. There was no change. But almost as soon as the twin that took a couple of sips of analemma water, we saw almost instant better connection between the left and the right hemisphere of the brain, and the harmonizing effect on the brain waves. There is this delta coherence thing that usually happens either when people meditate or they take psychedelics. So your entire system gets connected in a deeper way. And this is really, really powerful proof that something happens. We were actually surprised how fast it happened. And 3 weeks later, we repeated the experiment, but we gave Analemma water to the other twin. And we saw exactly the same phenomenon happening, while now the first twin took regular water and we saw zero change. So this was really something, it was something extraordinary to observe when you witness something like that happening with just a couple of sips of water, and it immediately changes.
Wow. Wow. Uh, we learned from Fritz Pop about the quartz, right? Allowing biophotons to go through in the onion root experiment, right, or radish experiment. And so that the crystal rabbit trail is absolutely fascinating, especially when we take into the context of like glass blocks all the light for the most part, right? Infrared, the UV, all of the aspects of the sun that we really need. So quartz and just crystals are absolutely fascinating. The other thing that when, as you were going through this study, I'm thinking of even like Gerald Pollack's work, and one of the criticisms that I have heard Jack Cruz say is that Gerald only used like just water, right, and didn't use say deuterium depleted water. So I'm curious as if the Analemma water was used in these same studies, if we wouldn't have pretty significant differences in those outcomes of the same studies.
It will be interesting because Jerry, Dr. Gerald Pollack is a dear friend of ours, and we compared his easy water with Inalima water, and this is again extraordinary proof how water is magical. It can
Yeah.
exist in various states, and the effects of that are again various. So we came to Analemma water in entirely different way. So easy water and our coherent water are completely different.
Wow.
So it will be interesting to see to repeat the experiments and to see what actually happened there. But we kind of joined hands with Jerry because we wanted to see the correlation, and we really saw that these are two different waters with two different effects. And we proved the regular way, near infrared, ultraviolet visual spectroscopy, biophoton research, that the water changes. But we didn't want to stop there. We
Yeah.
wanted to see, because water changed, but what are the effects? That's why we went deep into the effects on biological systems. That's why we went and proved that uh, 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 um, our early experiments were actually all on plants. When you water plants, for instance, tomatoes with analemma water, they exude between 60 and 200% more light than regular tomato. And not only that, the resilience, when you take it's actually progressive. When you take the seeds out of a tomato that we grown with analemma water and you replant it for 3 generations, after 3 generations, you almost don't need to use pesticides. The plant becomes so resilient to any form of stress or invader that it just resists and it thrives. And we proved that we did a lot of plant studies. So the results we're getting are really phenomenal, really phenomenal.
Have you connected or are aware of Roland Van Wyck's work?
No.
I think it's absolutely fascinating. So, if I can grab this real quick. This is you're talking about the exact thing that is laid out in his book. So I'll send that to you, Mario, because I
Cool.
think that it's another realm of you talking about the same thing, just coming at it from another aspect. Yeah, I'm fascinated. I'm so excited about this conversation. All right, so because we do so much in agriculture, like that's my day job. Like I own a farmer's market, and I'm a regenerative agriculture advocate. And so, being in Arkansas, in the South, we are in an agrarian area that is absolutely loaded with all the chemicals, the pesticides, the herbicides. So, like we are just absolutely drowning in glyphosate, for example, and we know the negative effects of that. So if you are potentially able to eliminate this, and we know we can through regenerative practices, but the water is something that we don't talk enough about with that. I know that we do a lot of meat. The animals that drink spring water versus tap water, their health is night and day. Like it's not even close. So taking it to a whole nother level, and on top of that, we work with a aquaponics grower, right? He does a lot of lettuces and things. And so, twofold. Do you really think that we can, by improving the soil, the microbiome life, that we can have such a positive impact on plant life, on the whole ecosystem? And are you aware of anything using the aquaponics and the Analemma system?
Well, 100%, first of all. And this is one of the most exciting studies that we did. I loved that study. And just so you know, our founder and the inventor of Analemma water, Dr. Eric Clarker, he's from the Netherlands. And the Netherlands is the land of agriculture. So 97% of all of their agricultural land they're actually using. So you can imagine that like for such a small country, they have extraordinary export in agriculture products, and they're throwing tons and tons and tons and tons of glyphosate, just like you're familiar in the States. And you know what we did? We actually decided to do a study on a completely destroyed piece of soil. So it was completely barren. You couldn't revive it. They tried to revive it using various chemicals, and it was dead. They just left it. It was so dead. So we really kind of decided, okay, let's take the hardest, the really the worst case scenario, and to see whether we can do something with just using the water, our water. So we watered one chunk of the soil with regular water, and one chunk with Analemma water, and then we follow what happens in the soil on a molecular level, whether something would change. So the part that was watered with regular water, we saw nothing happening. So it was still dead. There was zero change, literally. But the part that was watered with Analemma water, we started seeing an explosion in biodiversity of the microbiome. There are these colonies of bacteria started to show up in the soil. The total nitrogen cycle improved dramatically. Total nitrogen in soil improved dramatically to the point where within only 2 months, that piece of soil became fertile again. And what I love about it is that new colonies of bacteria started to suck CO2 out of the atmosphere into the soil where it actually belongs. Because plants breathe in what we breathe out. So there is this extraordinary ecosystem. And can you see a more elegant way to solve the greenhouses, green gases issues, CO2, excess CO2 in the atmosphere? You just water the land with Analemma water, you change the microbiome of the soil, and bacteria in the soil solve the whole problem. There is also one other thing which really is interesting that happens when you water the soil with Analemma water. Usually with the rain, all the nutrients actually go to the deeper layer of the soil. But when you water the soil with Analemma water, there is a huge retainment of those nutrients and minerals in the top layer of the soil where the plant can actually use it. So this is also, it was a really fascinating and totally cool way that this water can revive something dead. And it actually inspired, we did now 2 double-blind placebo-controlled microbiome studies where we proved that the microbiome, that there is this equilibrium that happens within the microbiome. There is a rise in good bacteria and sharp decline in bad bacteria. Of course, everything is supposed to be in our body. So a bad bacteria get a bad rep. I believe that everything has its place in life, but it's just a matter of overgrowth. And what we've seen happen is that this water creates harmony. It creates this equilibrium within the microbiome. For the first study, we measured the dysbiosis index of the microbiome. And the second study, we actually did DNA sequencing of an entire microbiome. And we saw exactly the same thing happening. Again, rise in positive bacteria and sharp decline in negative bacteria. And as you're aware, science has now connected the state of our microbiome to basically any area of human health. We're not talking about just digestive health. We're talking about immune health, neurological health, cardiovascular health, skin health. These days and age, people talk about serotonin a lot, but most people are, because how important it is for our mood. But most people aren't aware that 95% of serotonin is actually being created in our gut by our gut bacteria and is being delivered to our brain through the gut-brain axis. So the state of your microbiome actually determines how you perceive yourself, how you perceive the world. Your mood, your entire mood is being created. So that's why it's so important how we treat our microbiome.
I,
I'm really geeking out on microbiome because I believe that it's so important.
I agree. Yeah, and Martha Carlin is a dear friend of mine. I think she's done some amazing work in the microbiome. But one thing that I don't think that is discussed or even maybe even thought of is that I believe that bacteria are creating light in these nanobubbles, and that is a massive part of the whole microbiome story. I think that we just don't know to the degree at which that is taking place, which I think that's part of what we discussed with the mitochondria. If we're providing this mother water with it and the mitochondria is more efficient, we're doing the same thing for especially the beneficial microbes, right? The ones that aren't the extremophiles. So, do you have any examples with aquaponics or hydroponics? Aquaponics being with fish, hydroponics being without fish in any sort of like a growing system?
We haven't gone that way. We actually did several studies. We proved the nutrient density. We proved the extraordinary resilience. We're actually going to publish that study in Tier 1 Science magazine very soon. We did a study with basil plants where we proved that basil plants or any plant that was watered by Analemma water has extraordinary resistance to any form of stress. So if you flood it, if you increase the heat, whatever you throw at it, it's going to resist in a much, much, much higher level when you compare it to the plant that was watered with regular water. And this is what we need at this point in time. We have such an extreme weather everywhere, and we need to preserve the quality of our food. And this is the other thing that we prove the nutrient density. So if you would just water your plants with an Analemma water, it's going to be not only filled with light, which we also proved through biophoton research, but it's going to be filled with nutrients. So it's going to replenish your energy in several ways, not just one.
Yeah.
And yeah, but we're planning to do some research in that area, but we can only do so much studies at a time.
Fair enough. Because I think that you just hit on something else that is extremely important is that if we go back and look at like what Gilbert Ling said about ATP, there has to be more that's producing energy, right? From light, from water. It's more than just ATP because mathematically it doesn't account for the total energy that the human body consumes, right? And so I think that is I think this just ties perfectly into that. This is hitting on some of those areas that we don't even like. Well, we don't even know what we don't know at this point. So one, I have done, Mario, probably hundreds of blind tests, right? Of just the same water, use the Analemma, and asked somebody to taste it, right? And every one of them, with the exception of one time, and I want to get your opinion on the reason it didn't work, they picked the Analemma. Every single one, whether it was, tap water or Mountain Valley or distilled water, it didn't matter what type of water you started with, they picked the Analemma. The one time it didn't is because I was in a hurry and I didn't have a, either ceramic or glass cup, and I used a aluminum cup. It did not change within just what I did. And so now that you're talking EMFs and all this other things, I'm just like mine's rolling. Why did it not do in that aluminum, at least in my one-off experiment, but it's worked in every other way?
Well, it's very hard for me to hypothesize on it, but I can tell you that we realized that various materials have extraordinary effects on water, extraordinary effects on water. But we realized that Analemma water is very resilient. So it's not, I would say that the water stayed the same, but your ability to perceive it because of the aluminum cup could be a bit, I'm not going to say diminished or something like that, because the water didn't change, but our ability to perceive, because it's really interesting. So many people, I would say that over 95% of people, they just taste the difference. As I mentioned,
Yeah.
and I would even connect it not even to the taste, even though we perceive it through taste, but it's electromagnetic. When you take the water in, your entire system, as I mentioned, your left and the right hemisphere of the brain connects instantly, and there is an instant harmonizing effect on your brainwaves. And we were actually monitoring the brainwaves, but we are a whole being. So your entire being reacts to it immediately. And the where you actually take the water in, you take it through your mouth. And that's why you see, well, this is different.
Yeah.
The taste of it is different. But there is also one thing that we did, which is super hilarious. We took kind of top sommeliers and we actually did it on wine. And we took like a cheap wine and made it taste very expensive,
Yeah.
which was super hilarious. We were kind of even thinking, should we play with that just for fun of it?
Yeah.
Because you can take a cheap wine and use the equipment on it, and sommeliers are just going to say, well, this is an expensive wine, even though it's very cheap.
That is hilarious. I'm glad you brought that up. One year for New Year's, we got a bottle of champagne and it was garbage. And I don't like champagne anyways, right? And so I was like, I'm gonna play with that. So I used the Analemma in the champagne. Unbelievable the
Yeah,
difference. I
yeah,
still
it's
got sick,
crazy.
right? It still made me absolutely sick, but the taste was, I can't believe how different it was. So let Mara, let's go the opposite direction. Let's say it's just regular water, right? Just
Mhm,
regular water. We set a pitcher on top of a Wi-Fi router, right? And we leave
mhm.
it there for I don't know, a few hours a day,
Oh
whatever.
man,
And then we were to water with this Wi-Fi induced water versus just plain water. What would we see there?
we actually did a study on it, just so you know.
Oh,
So we actually took water, rainwater, and we radiated it with 5G, and we watered plants with that water, and plants died. And of course, we used excessive amounts of 5G, not what you would kind of have. Otherwise, the plants would start dying immediately. But we really kind of cranked it up a notch just to see the, let's say, intensified version of it. But what we did afterwards is we did the same experiment, and after we radiated the water in the same way, we used Analemma on it. And then we watered the plants, and the plants thrived.
mm,
So we, again, in a very clear and irrefutable way, proved that the state of the water changes dramatically, and effects on the biological system change dramatically when you use NLMO technology on it.
fascinating. So, how much would you credit some of the struggles within just general health or even agriculture to being exposed to, I mean, a constant bombardment of non-native EMFs, as well as maybe some of the, say, glyphosate?
I mean, glyphosate, we don't even need to kind of, you touched upon a really important, I mean, this is really bad. I mean, your listeners are aware, but most of the world have no idea. Glyphosate is an antibiotic. It's a bacteria killer. And we already talked about how important it is that the state of our microbiome is actually intact and healthy. When you're eating uh, the food, eating plants or whatever you're eating with glyphosate, you're literally constantly introducing antibiotic into your microbiome. And what antibiotic does, it kills bacteria. It kills good bacteria, it kills bad bacteria, it kills bacteria. And they actually did a study in America that like 95 or more percent of Americans they are so saturated with glyphosate that they're actually literally peeing it every single time they go to toilet. So this is a huge problem, and I believe that the number one problem that metabolic health in America is so bad is because of the glyphosate. And what I love about Analemma water is that it reverses that effect.
Mm,
It brings the microbiome back, but we kind of want to change how the food is grown. We don't want to be using glyphosate anymore. This is wrong in
yeah.
every way. For plant life, for animal life, for human life, we need to stop it. There is so much more beautiful and life affirming ways to grow food, to make it vibrant and alive and full of nutrients. When you take spinach, spinach 15 years ago had 80% more nutrients than spinach today, and it looks the same.
Yeah. Yeah.
This
No,
is a huge problem.
it's a huge problem. Stephanie Sneff, she's been on a few times and she's laid out like, I mean, glyphosate hurts on so many different factors. I mean, it's a mineral chelator as well. All right, well, that's a whole nother cascade of issues. So, what kind of options do we have? So I'm sitting here thinking for we have a lot of livestock, and so cattle, sheep, even water buffalo farm around here. So how could we do analemma on an agricultural livestock like way, right? Like, because I have a hard time thinking that a farmer is going to get the wand, right, and go out to the trough, and we're gonna do
Of
this
course,
for the
of course.
animals,
We
right? So what?
actually, yeah, we created the for smaller systems. We created a whole house system that you can employ. You put in the piping system of your house, and then all of the water around your house is coherent. But we created agriculture units that can
Okay,
cover basically any operation out there. And we did study, Dr. Clark, our founder, the genius that created Analemma water. He's a veterinarian.
oh,
So he did a lot of studies on animals, and there are a few come to my mind, but there's one really cool, where I believe it was a pig farm, I think, and they had huge issues with animal health, huge, and they were spending really a lot of money on veterinarians and on that approach to solve the problem, and they couldn't. They just couldn't. Whatever they gave to the animals, the problems still kind of persisted. And then Eric actually gave them water. Like, try this. Let's see what's going to happen. It was interesting is that within the first 2 weeks, a pig started to get diarrhea a lot, and after a month, all of the illnesses left the farm, and they didn't come back.
so would the diarrhea probably be a Herx reaction, a die off?
Yes, yes, a die-off. At least this is we didn't do a study on it, but this is
Right.
our hypothesis. And what I love about animal research is that animals don't have placebo. So it either works or it doesn't. They don't have, oh, I believe this works or it doesn't. So that's why I love animal research, and we had really tremendous results there as well.
So do we have any either anecdotal or anything done with say pets like dogs, cats,
Yeah, yeah,
concerning water?
of course, and it's so cool. Employee of mine, she actually has a cat, and she did an experiment. In the same kind of pots, she put an Analemma water and regular water, and she wanted to see which one animal would choose. And the animal, her cat, always goes to the Analemma water, not the other one, and they look the same. So it's really kind of these kind of cool little. We actually plan to do since we did a glycan age study, we did a biological age study, which we proved that biological age of humans kind of gets regenerated when they drink water. We are now doing. We're going to do. We still haven't started. We're going to do a biological age of animals, so that owners of their pets know that if they're giving an lemon water to their pets, they are going to live longer. This is also one thing I haven't told. We did a double-blind placebo-controlled study where we proved that NAD levels rise more than significantly just by drinking this water. You're familiar, like there is a whole craze in the last couple of years about NAD. It's the cellular fountain of youth, and a DNA repair. There are so many elements. High levels of NAD are connected not only to a longer lifespan, but a longer health span as well, which is really crucial as well. And just by drinking Analemma water, your NAD levels are going to rise more than significantly. Again, double-blind, placebo-controlled study.
Do you credit that to the potential of the mitochondrial efficiency?
It's the combination. Because we were kind of thinking, okay, if ATP goes up and there is a strong correlation between ATP and NAD, there has to be an effect there. And when you take the NAD and you take the ATP in the combination, I mean, this proves it beyond any doubt. If you drink this water, you are going to have a strong biological effect on basically any area of your health, which we saw.
Fascinating, fascinating.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, even though I'm working with this, but still, it just blows my mind. Really.
So let's go through your routine. What is your water routine? How do
Mhm.
you backstory between what you drink?
So I drink only spring water in glass, which is made coherent, because this is the only way to. We were actually. This is a new thing. You're going to get the exclusive now, because I haven't shared it with any other podcast up until now. We were kind of since we were trying to find the universal way to filter water, to find the best possible way to filter. And we realized that it cannot be done
Mm.
because water is changed. There is no universal filter. For instance, where you live, you would need one particular filter that would take out whatever is wrong with your water. But if you would take 20 miles and go to a next city, they would have to use a different water filter because they have different impurities, and there is no way to create a universal filter that will cover everything. So what we decided is that we want to offer the best possible water to the people. So we are going to actually be offering water, spring water, that is going to be put in a coherent state and actually is going to be super hydrogenated as well.
Wow. Okay. So, well, let's start at the basics, right? So where I am is like 60 miles from the source of Mountain Valley spring water, right? I think everybody in the world probably knows of Mountain Valley. So why first of all, why do people all over the world love Mountain Valley? And why is spring water one of these things that is so fundamental for what seems to be health, even though, as you said earlier, even the spring water is not necessarily in this coherent state, or it gets knocked out, all the other variables. This may be sacrilegious, but I don't like the taste of Mountain Valley, like at all, and it's in my backyard. So what makes the spring water important? And then why would y'all go through the that's a lot of work, right? That's a lot of work and expense if y'all are going to start a water company. So why spring water, and why go through that?
So now we're actually touching something which is really, really important. Um, so I explained the whole coherence thing, which is hugely important. But usually, when people go thinking about water, they go to the filtration. But what they don't understand, even if you take the toxin out, whatever the toxin is, since water always picks up the most dominant frequency of its environment, the frequency of that toxin is still inside the water, even if you take it out.
Mm.
So you filter the water and you think, well, I'm done, I'm all good. And you're drinking that water and you're introducing that frequency, that information into your system, just like it is there.
Wow.
So that's why I would say that it's much, 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 much better from any angle that you drink spring water, because spring water doesn't have, of course, if it's not contaminated in any way or form, it actually it doesn't carry all of the toxins which are usually in the water, and especially There are many. So I'm not even going to go into the horror story of what actually exists in American water, because it's
Bad.
bad
It's bad.
from like 1,000 angles when you look at it. So it's not really good. And that's why I would always recommend people, if you can drink spring water, please do. Please do. And when you bring it into coherence, then you're actually creating something extraordinary. Then you brought the water in the state it's supposed to be, and that water is going to provide extraordinary benefits for your health. And we actually added a super hydrogenation element, so that it really is like the best water you can imagine for yourself.
So two things. What does that mean? For one, the hydrogenation, and then two, where does deuterium fall on what you look at? How do y'all view that? Is that even a
Actually,
factor?
this is also cool that you mentioned this, because we're actually we're working on the science, and we're connected to some scientists which created a way to create deuterium depleted, or not even deuterium depleted, deuterium zero
What?
water. Yes, and for not as expensive as deuterium depleted water is, because it's hugely expensive. So the whole process is hugely expensive. But there are innovations which actually emerged in very recent years that managed to create deuterium zero water for not a lot of money. So this is something that we are also working on. But for now, this is actually going to happen in. It's not going to happen very soon. So within the, let's say that we can introduce that down the line, maybe year and a half ago. I
Yeah.
don't after a year or year and a half. I'm not sure of when that is going to be coming out. But for now, what I know that within the next 3 to 4 months we'll be coming out with this. You mentioned hydrogen. So hydrogen enriched water has extraordinary benefits. People are talking about super oxygenated water, but the problem with super oxygenated water is that our digestive system is not do not absorb oxygen well. So very, very, very little of that oxygen, even if you have super oxygenated water, is going to get absorbed. But hydrogen, on the other hand, gets absorbed very well. And there are over 1,200 studies that prove extraordinary effect, antioxidant effect, anti-inflammatory effect of hydrogenated water. So we wanted to create the best possible water, so that when you drink it, you're drinking the very best water, and it will have a powerful effect on your overall health and wellness. But anyhow, this is again something that we're going to come to, and I just explained, I haven't talked about this at all to anybody, why we kind of this, because we were really working for 2 years now. We've been working on filtration, and we just couldn't find a way to filter, because lots of people in the whole filtering space, they say 99.9 of this and this, and when you do the actual test on it, you see that it doesn't happen that way, and the toxins are there, and definitely when you make it coherent, you are changing electromagnetically the whole state. But
Yeah.
still, we wanted to provide the very best water that you can buy and
Uh,
get the very best effect on the body.
because because I understand what you're saying from a couple different angles, I am beside myself with excitement. I think that's phenomenal. So let's go to kind of maybe the obvious though is going to be time frame, and then accessibility or affordability, right? So what is that look like? Because it's not cheap to ship water.
No,
It's
no,
heavy.
no.
So
It's
what
going
are
to,
we doing
yeah,
there?
yeah. Yeah, and you see all the moving parts that are in
Yeah,
it, but we are doing the very best that we can to make it as affordable as possible, so that every family can actually acquire it. Of course, it is going to be more expensive than your regular water, but it's going to bring extraordinary benefits to your entire biology.
yeah,
When you are going to see all the effects that it has on your biology, It's like you don't need to use any supplement.
Yeah.
Antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, cellular production, NAD, microbiome. It's like you would have to spend, I don't know how many hundreds of dollars on supplements alone, and this is not going to be in that category.
Mm.
So this is why we're so not only passionate but committed to bringing something is vital, for your health, so that everyone can use it. Even with Analemma, we knew that we could price it like 5 times as much, but no, we wanted to create something that everyone can actually use it. And I always say to people, treat it like a jewel. Even if you buy just the Analemma, treat it like a jewel. And if you take care of it, and if you don't break it, because it easily breaks, it will create coherent water for you for life. But you
Yeah.
have to take care of it.
Mario, I am so excited. I cannot wait to get my hands on the water. I've got 4 babies, and the oldest one, he was the one that was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. It's like I am so on the water thing. Uh, it's hard. You're right. Like when you're talking about this filtration, I get pretty. I go straight distilled, right? I have a multi-stage distiller where I come back and I structure it, and we add, our own mineral blends back
Minerals
to it. And
inside, yeah, yeah. Mhm.
yeah, and I have a Lord's Hydrofix, right? Like I have my own hydrogen generator. It is very difficult, right? And the amount of money I've spent to just go that route, I understand where the convenience and having even more that this is going to offer the benefit there. So again, brother, I am so excited about this because I know how much work I've put into it. That's going to be a game changer.
Yeah, I mean, we're really kind of working hard on it to make it scalable so that everyone can get it, so that the price is okay, so that people can buy it. Because when you drink it, understanding this, like I'm only drinking spring water in glass, and I'm making it coherent.
Yeah,
And I'm telling you, anybody who goes that way will see the extraordinary change in your overall health. You cannot miss it. You cannot miss it. It's that important. 99% of all of our molecules of water. We're basically very clever H2O. That is why it's so important what kind of water we're putting into our system.
it's so
And
important.
and I have to mention one other thing, which is really also cool. When we came out with the whole house system, uh, we were really super excited about it because since 99% of our molecules are water, and the water always picks up the most dominant frequency of its environment, our whole thing, we were thinking, what would happen if people would lay down in Analemma water for 20 to 30 minutes? What would happen there? And we connected to Dr. Greg Lane and my dear friend David Perez in San Diego. And since they have various equipment to measure various vitals before and after, we did a 100 people study on it. So we measured cardiac output, stroke volume, blood viscosity, and most importantly, heart rate variability. And we wanted to see what's going to happen. And people just came in. We took the test before, and then they were just taking a bath in a lime of water for 30 minutes, 20 to 30 minutes. And then we did another test. And every single marker improved. Cardiac output, stroke volume, blood viscosity, and the minimum improvement we saw in heart rate variability was 30%.
Wow.
The minimum. So this also opened door. We want to do all kinds of studies there,
Yeah.
because just to lay down in it has profound effects on overall biology. And when you combine it, then you get. But I would say to people, if you can't afford, the whole house system is a bit more expensive. Again, we made it very cheap when you compare it to everything else. It's $1,800, and forever, for your entire life, you're going to have coherent water in your house wherever you open your faucet. But what I wanted to say now, I lost the track.
You're just talking about the effects of the whole body being submerged and being able to test
Yeah,
that.
yeah. It opened doors to various studies. But yeah, I just wanted to mention that we wanted to keep the price low. Yeah, now I remembered. Yeah, thank you. So even if you can't afford the whole house system, what I would say is you just open your faucet, and when you're filling your bathtub, if you have your Analemma, you just put it underneath the flowing water. You're going to have to wait for like 10-15 minutes until the bathtub fills,
Sure.
but even if you can't afford the bigger model, you are going to have exactly the same effect like you're having a whole house in a lemma. But of course, if you can afford it and it's easy, you just have it, and wherever you open your faucet, you have the lemon water. You don't have to wait. But I always like to say this to people. So even if you can't afford it, you can still have exactly the same effect
Yeah.
like you bought the big system.
I love it. I love it. All right. As we wrap up, I have one more question. Have y'all done anything with the effects of Analemma water on parasites? Is there anything on that?
No, we still haven't done it, but we definitely want to, because we saw the effect on microbiome and these are bacteria. So I'm guessing that the effect is going to be very palpable, but
Yeah,
we haven't actually done it. And we can, as I mentioned, we can only do as much studies as we can at a certain point
absolutely.
in time.
Yeah,
We want to do hormonal health. We want to do anti-inflammatory. We already kind of proved with the glycanage study that we did that the whole inflammation level in your body goes down. But we haven't done parasites. This is
yeah.
something definitely that we should do.
Well, I think it was interesting what you said about the hog farm, right? And having that Herx reaction, because we know that hogs are one of the livestock that's most susceptible to a lot of parasites, and a lot of the same parasites that humans are. So I just found that interesting, and then the whole cancer parasite connection. There's definitely
Yes.
some stuff there. So Mario, thank you for taking the time. Thank you for putting in the work and being willing to jump on podcasts. You've done a lot of them. I think that just going back and listening to some of your other ones is something everybody should do. And I can't wait to get some of that water in my hands.
Thank you, Logan, so much. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to share this with people, because it really is extraordinary. And I have to tell you, like, having done all of the studies, we barely scratched the surface of the beauty of this. There is so much to be learned there. And I'm really kind of super excited. We really went various directions, but it's always new, and people come with extraordinary ideas. So I love the parasite thing. We should definitely be doing. I'm going to put it in the plan, so that within the next year at least we do a pilot study on it, and then we kind of see in a smaller scale with like 10 people or whatever, and to see what happens there. Totally cool.
I love it. Mario, thank you again, my friend.
Thank you so much, Logan.